Whitney Pruitt covered her nose, staring down at the table like something had died on it. Pure disgust. "I can't breathe the same air as you," she said. "This whole room gets filthier the second you walk into it." Naomi straightened a fold and said nothing. Calm, composed. Whitney's voice dropped low and venomous. "You're filth in a uniform. Know your place." Naomi met her eyes. "The head table is ready, Miss Pruitt." Naomi made her eyes. "The head table is ready, Miss Pruitt." Naomi. Whitney lifted the carafe of near-boiling water off the service cart, her charm bracelet jingling, and poured it. Not into a glass. Straight down the front of Naomi's white shirt. Naomi gasped, the scald blooming red across her chest. "Now you match the mess you already are," Whitney said, and laughed. "Get out of my sight." Dead silence in the dining room. But Whitney Pruitt had just made the single biggest mistake of her entire life, because the woman standing there, soaked and burning and blinking back tears, she refused to let fall, was hiding something that would flip Whitney's whole world upside down before the hour was out. Man, pouring boiling water on somebody and calling it a joke? Nah, that's not a mistake. That's a choice. Let's get into it. The Ellsworth Club sat on the top 4 floors of the Marbury Tower in downtown Chicago, 51 stories above the Loop. Floor-to-ceiling glass that looked out over Lake Michigan, like the whole city belonged to whoever was eating dinner. A private members club, the kind of place where you didn't ask the price, because asking meant you couldn't afford it. Mahogany walls, hand-blown chandeliers, a wine cellar with bottles older than most of the staff's grandparents. Federal judges took lunch there. Billionaires closed deals over dry-aged steak. There was a 6-year waiting list just to be considered. The club was the crown jewel of Ellsworth Hospitality Group, a company with 38 luxury properties across the country. And at the very top of that entire empire sat one man, the chairman of the board. But we'll get to him later. Right now, let's talk about Naomi Hartwell. Naomi was 31. She held an MBA from Wharton and had run operations for a hotel group in Atlanta before she ever touched Chicago. She could have walked into any executive office in the industry and been handed a corner suite before lunch. She didn't. 8 months ago, she filled out an application for a part-time floor attendant at the Ellsworth Club. Bottom rung, $14 an hour. A pressed uniform, a laminated name tag that just read N. Mumi. Why would anyone walk away from all of that to bus tables and polish glass? Because Naomi believed something almost nobody in her position would ever consider. She believed you can't fix a house you've only ever seen from the roof. If you want to lead people, you have to stand where they stand, carry what they carry, swallow what they swallow, not from a spreadsheet, not from a quarterly report. From the aching feet, the burning wrists, the guests who snap their fingers at you like you were furniture. She wanted to feel all of it. Her husband didn't just support it. He loved her for it. He told her to take all the time she needed. Learn the floor. Learn the names. Learn what the company looked like when nobody important was watching. And when she was ready, there would be a seat waiting for her at the very top of the table. So Naomi showed up every morning at 5:30. She drove a dented silver Honda. She wore no jewelry except her wedding ring, which she kept on a thin chain tucked under her collar. She parked 2 blocks away and rode the freight elevator up with the produce. Nobody knew. Not the front desk. Not the sommelier. Not the dishwashers she covered for when their kids got sick. And definitely not Whitney Pruitt. Whitney was the dining room manager, 45, sleek auburn bob, a charm bracelet that jingled with every move so you always heard her coming. 7 years with the company, and she ran the floor like her own private kingdom. To the members, she was a dream. Warm laugh, perfect memory, knew every senator's drink and every heiress's allergy. To the staff, she was somebody else entirely. If you were white, Whitney was hard but fair. She pushed, but she said please. She said nice work. If you were black or brown, the mask came off. It started small. A sigh when she gave you a section. A look that held one beat too long. Then it grew. Comments about your hair under the lights. About how you talked. About whether your kind really understood a place like this. And if you ever complained, she had a line she kept polished for the general manager. Honestly, they just love having something to be offended about. That general manager was Gerald Boyd. 56, soft in the middle, reading glasses always shoved up on his forehead. He kept a tin of antacid mints in his breast pocket, and whenever stress walked in, he rattled that tin, popped one, and stared at his desk. Gerald knew about Whitney. Of course he did. 5 formal complaints. 2 more that never hit paper. But Whitney's section had the highest member scores in the company, and Gerald Boyd would rather swallow the whole tin than have one uncomfortable conversation. So the complaints went into a folder. The folder went into a cabinet, and the cabinet stayed locked. Then there was Tasha Reed, 23, black, a junior server, 7 months in, quiet, quick, and she missed nothing. She noticed which tables Whitney charmed and which staff Whitney destroyed. 5 weeks ago, she started leaving her phone propped in her apron, lens out, not to scroll, to record. She hadn't told a soul, not even Naomi. There was a folder on her phone called Receipts, and every week it got fuller. Tonight was the Lakeshore Foundation Gala, a $2 million fundraiser, 300 guests, half the city's power in one room, a brand new corporate partner footing the bill. And every single person on that staff was about to collide in a way not one of them saw coming. The gala was 6 hours away, and the dining room already smelled like stress, lemon polish, starched linen, the sharp bite of glass cleaner on crystal. 10 in the morning. Naomi was at the far end of the room building centerpieces. White orchids, trailing ivy, tall mirrored vases that threw the chandelier light 100 directions. 58 of them, each identical, each measured to the inch. She was good at this, and she knew it. Then the bracelet jingled. Whitney crossed the floor slow, eyes sweeping the tables, mouth a flat line. She stopped at table 9, set by a white server named Ryan, lifted a glass to the light, set it down soft. Beautiful, Ryan, truly. Ryan nodded and slipped off. Then Whitney turned toward Naomi's section, table 17. Same glasses, same silver, same fold. Naomi had checked it twice. Whitney lifted a glass, turned it, and set it down hard enough to make the silver jump. This is filthy. Naomi's hands went still. There's a film on the crystal. This fold is crooked. And these. Whitney plucked an orchid and held it up like evidence in a courtroom. Wilting already. Do you even understand quality? Or is caring about something just not in your people? The words landed like a slap. 2 servers nearby went rigid. One found something fascinating on the floor. The other walked away. Naomi took one slow breath. I'll redo the table, Miss Pruitt. You'll redo it, and then you're on water service. The kitchen needs the urns hauled and filled for 300. Move. Manual labor. Naomi had coordinator's duties, but she nodded and started pulling apart the centerpiece she'd just spent 20 minutes perfecting. Whitney watched a moment, then turned on her heel, the bracelet jingling away down the room like a wind chime in a storm. By noon, it got worse. Whitney had quietly rewritten the floor plan. The seating had been locked 3 days ago. Naomi built it herself, cross-checking donor tiers, dietary cards, table sponsors. 4 hours of work. Gerald signed off. But around 11:15, Whitney walked into the office, pulled up the shared file, and rearranged a third of the tables. No note. No email. Nothing. Naomi didn't find out until Gerald called her in. He sat behind his desk, glasses on his forehead, rattling the tin. Naomi, we've got a real problem. The seating's wrong. Major donors at the wrong tables. If this isn't fixed in 2 hours, the foundation gets humiliated, and so do we. Naomi blinked. Mr. Boyd, I finalized that Tuesday. You approved it. Well, it changed, and it's your file. I built the original. Somebody edited it after I saved it. Check the version history. The door opened. The bracelet jingled. Whitney glided in like she paid the lease. Gerald, I hear there's a seating mess. Silk. Gerald looked relieved. Yeah, Naomi's chart's full of errors. Whitney tilted her head and looked at Naomi the way you look at a child who broke a plate. Oh, sweetie, did you scramble the tables again? Again, as if it had ever happened once. I didn't scramble anything, Miss Pruitt. The file was edited after I saved it. Whitney let out a soft, pitying laugh. Naomi, nobody touches the seating but you. It's your one job. I really shouldn't have to babysit your work on top of running this whole floor. Honestly, I don't know why we keep finding reasons to keep you. She turned to Gerald. I'll just fix it myself. I'm used to cleaning up behind her. Gerald didn't ask about version history. He didn't open the file. He popped a mint and said, Naomi, let Whitney take the chart. Go help the kitchen. Kitchen. Out of sight. Naomi looked at Gerald. She looked at Whitney. And she saw it plain. Two people who decided she was the problem before she ever opened her mouth. Yes, sir. She turned and walked out. In the corridor, Tasha was waiting with a tray of waters, eyes locked on Naomi's face. I saw her, she whispered. 11:15. At the office computer, changing the seating. I was at the printer. She didn't even notice me. Naomi stopped. You saw her do it? She moved 10 tables, saved it, and walked out smiling. Naomi, you have to report this. This is sabotage. I know what it is. Then why aren't you? Not yet. Tasha stared. What do you mean, not yet? Naomi looked at her, and there was something in her eyes Tasha had never seen. Not anger, not hurt. Something calmer, something calmer, something patient. I mean, not yet. She pulled her phone and stepped into the stairwell. The heavy door sealed behind her with a click. Cool air. Concrete. She dialed. It rang once. Hey. Marcus's voice was low and warm, the kind that fills a room even to a phone. Hey. Naomi leaned on the wall, and for the first time all day her shoulders dropped 2 inches. How's the floor? She paused. Exhaled. It's getting bad. Tell me. She sabotaged the seating and blamed me to Gerald. He didn't even check, just sent me to the kitchen. Quiet on the line, not empty. The kind where someone's listening with their whole body. And this morning she told the staff I make the room filthier just by being in it. More quiet. Then Marcus, slow and level. Naomi, hear me. I'm coming tonight. The leadership review, I know. Yes, but understand something. Whatever I see when I walk through those doors, I am not looking away. Not tonight. Naomi pressed the phone to her ear and listened to him breathe. Steady, sure. Just get through the next few hours. Can you do that for me? She straightened, wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Yeah, I can do that. That's my wife. She hung up. She stood there 10 more seconds. Then she walked back into the noise and headed for the kitchen. The afternoon was just getting started, and Whitney Pruitt had no idea what was rolling toward her. 3 hours to the gala. The kitchen was a wall of heat and clatter, burners roaring, the chef barking, the air thick with seared garlic and sweat. Naomi stood at the industrial sink scrubbing trays, hot water running raw over her knuckles. Not her job. Everybody knew. Nobody said it. She scrubbed. She stacked. She hauled. At 2:15, Whitney appeared in the doorway. She never came into the kitchen. Too hot, too loud, too far beneath her. She leaned on the frame, arms crossed, watching Naomi like a tourist at the zoo. Well, at least she's good for something, she said to no one, but loud enough. A prep cook kept his eyes on his board, his knife moving faster. Whitney straightened. Naomi, when you're done playing dishwasher, get to the dining room. The riser's stage left. It needs to be stage right. Naomi set down the tray, dried her hands on a soaked towel, and walked into the dining room. The riser was stage right, exactly where the Foundation's run of show specified. She had the email. She stood there staring at it. Correct. Nothing wrong. The bracelet jingled in behind her. Well, move it. Ms. Pruitt, the Foundation requested it stage right. I have it in writing. I don't care about your email. I said stage left. But the client. Did I stutter? The worlds cracked across the room like a slammed door. 2 servers froze mid-fold. Whitney stepped close enough that Naomi could smell her perfume. Heavy and floral and suffocating. Let me make this very clear. You don't think on my floor. You don't decide on my floor. You do what I tell you, and you keep your mouth shut while you do it. You don't belong in a room like this, Naomi. You belong behind it, The fact that I have to keep explaining that tells me everything I need to know about your kind. Naomi held her gaze. 3 seconds. 5. 7. Then she walked to the riser and started dragging it alone. 90 pounds. The base shrieked against the marble. Whitney watched, one hand on her hip, head cocked, the way you watch an ox pull a plow. She didn't lift the finger. When Naomi finished, she was breathing hard, a line of sweat down her temple. Good, Whitney said. Now clean yourself up. You look disgusting. And stay out of the dining room when guests arrive. The last thing this gala needs is your face greeting people at the door. She walked off, the bracelet counting down behind her like a clock. 4:30. 90 minutes to doors. The room was nearly perfect. Crystal blazing, ice glittering at the raw bar, a string trio tuning in the corner. Naomi was adjusting the head table mic when Whitney came back, 3 junior servers trailing with the last supplies. Whitney clapped once. Listen up. Final check. Every glass polished. Every chair 2 inches off the table. Every fold sharp. This is the biggest night of our year. Anything goes wrong, the person responsible will never work in this city again. I promise you that. Her eyes swept the room. They landed on Naomi. And you. Coat check. A windowless closet by the entrance. Out of sight. Invisible. Ms. Pruitt, I'm assigned to coordinate. You were assigned to coordinate. You were assigned. I'm reassigning you. Coat check. Back corner. Don't come out unless somebody wants their coat. Naomi's lips pressed together. Is there a problem? Whitney asked, her voice rising just enough for the room to hear. Because if hanging up coats is too much for you, I truly don't know what to do with you. Somewhere behind Naomi, a breath. Tasha, 3 tables away, a tray of flutes in her hands, her phone angled out of her apron. Naomi shook her head slowly. No problem, Miss Pruitt. Wonderful. And smile, Naomi. You represent this club tonight. Try not to scare the donors with whatever that face is. Whitney laughed at her own joke, a short, brittle sound like a glass cracking, and walked off to scold the string trio about volume. Naomi walked to the coat closet. Narrow room, no windows, 1 fluorescent tube buzzing overhead, wire hangers on a rail that smelled like dust and cedar. She stepped in and stood there alone, the door still open. Through it, she could see the dining room glowing gold. She could hear the trio playing something slow. She could smell the orchids she'd built that morning, the ones Whitney called wilting. She took one breath, then another. She pulled out her phone. 1 new message from Marcus, 12 minutes old. Leaving now. See you soon. She read it twice, put the phone away, and hung the first empty hanger on the rail. Down on the security floor, Dale Morrison was running the night's protocol. 40 years showed in the calm way he moved. His radio crackled. Extra coverage at the main elevator. Screening in the lobby. VIP arrival projected for 6:20. Dale pulled a printed headshot from a folder and pinned it to the board, circling it in red. This is the chairman of the whole group, he told his team of 4. When he arrives, full protocol. Main elevator, no delays. You address him as Chairman Hartwell. Clear? 4 heads nodded. Dale checked his watch. 1 hour, 10 minutes. Back in the closet, Whitney's voice carried in one more time, from across the gleaming room. If I see 1 fingerprint on 1 glass tonight, somebody's going home, and it will not be me. Naomi hung another empty hanger. The wire scraped the rail. She closed her eyes. She waited. The fluorescent tube buzzed above her like a timer running out. Outside, the trio slid into something deeper. The room hummed with the last of the prep. Silver clinking. Chairs sliding. The bracelet jingling back and forth across the marble. 51 floors below, a black SUV turned off Wacker Drive toward the Marbury Tower. The man in the back seat adjusted his cufflinks and looked out at the lake, catching the last orange of the evening. His phone glowed on the leather beside him. Leaving now. See you soon. He didn't text again. He didn't need to. In 48 minutes, he would step off the elevator into the Ellsworth Club. Dale Morrison would meet him with a handshake and 2 words that would travel through every earpiece in the building. And everything was about to change. Yo, I need to pause here because I'm heated. Genuinely. This woman got humiliated, sabotaged, scalded with boiling water, called filth to her face, and shoved in a closet, and not one person in that room opened their mouth. Not one. That silence right there, that's the part that kills me. Okay, let's keep going. The black SUV slid into the tower's private drive. The elevator opened on the 51st floor, and Dale Morrison was standing there waiting, 2 officers in dark suits beside him. The man stepped off, tall, 6'3", dark skin, a charcoal suit that fit like it had been grown on him, silver at the cuffs catching the chandelier light. He moved with the kind of stillness that only comes from a man who knows exactly who he is and exactly what he owns. Dale stepped forward and extended his hand. "Good evening, Chairman Hardwell. Welcome to the Ellsworth Club." The words went out over Dale's radio, through every earpiece. The front desk, the kitchen pass, the service hall. Chairman Hartwell. At the host stand, a young woman nearly dropped the tablet. In the kitchen, the chef yanked his jacket straight. Outside Gerald Boyd's office, an assistant knocked and whispered 2 words that drained the blood from his face. "He's here." Gerald shot up so fast his chair rolled into the wall. He grabbed his blazer, jammed his arms through, and half-jogged toward the dining room, rattling the tin with a shaking hand. In the dining room, the news hit like a wave. Whitney heard it through the coordinator's earpiece, a burst of static, then Dale's voice. "Chairman Hartwell has arrived. Main floor. All positions." Whitney's eyes went wide. She smoothed the bob. She squared her blazer. She crushed a mint between her teeth. This was her moment. The chairman of the entire empire here, tonight at her gala. Her chance to shine, to be seen, to climb. She walked fast through the service hall, heels and bracelet hammering together, and burst onto the floor just as Gerald arrived from the other side. They traded a glance. 2 people suddenly bound by the same desperate need to perform. Marcus stood in the center of the room, Dale beside him, 2 officers behind. He looked around slow, taking in the mahogany, the lake through the glass, the orchids on the head table. His face gave away nothing. Whitney got to him first. Bright smile, hand out, voice pitched warm and high and rehearsed. "Chairman Hartwell, what an absolute honor." Whitney Pruitt, dining room manager. "I run tonight's gala, and I'm thrilled to tell you everything is running flawlessly. We are so delighted to have you." Marcus looked at her hand. He didn't take it. His eyes moved past her, past Gerald, past the host stand, down the floor, toward the narrow windowless room by the entrance with the buzzing light. The coat closet. Naomi was stepping out. She'd heard the radios. She'd heard the name. She stood in the doorway in her stained, scalded shirt, her name tag crooked, her knuckles raw. Marcus saw her and something moved across his face. Not anger. Not yet. Something slower. Deeper. Like watching a crack travel across glass a half-second before it shatters. He walked past Whitney, past Gerald, past 2 officers who stepped aside without a word. He crossed the room in long, even strides. He reached her. He stopped. He looked at the soaked shirt, the angry red across her chest, the dried streaks down the cotton. He put his arm around her, gently, like she was the only person in the building. "What happened?" His voice was quiet, but in that silent room it carried like thunder. Naomi looked up at him for the first time all day, and her composure cracked just slightly. A tremor at the corner of her mouth, a brightness in her eyes. She blinked away before it could fall. "Long day," she said. "Tell me." Behind them, Whitney stood frozen, her hands still hanging in the air where he'd ignored it, the smile still on her face but gone stiff. Plastic, a mask that forgot to drop. Her eyes ticked between Marcus and Naomi, the arm, the closeness, the way he looked at her. And then it landed. Hardwell. Chairman Hardwell. Naomi Hardwell. The color drained from Whitney's face so fast you could almost watch it go, like ink lifting off paper. Gerald's mouth opened, closed, opened again, and nothing came out. Marcus turned his head and looked straight at Dale. "I want to know exactly what happened to my wife today. Every detail, and I want every second of footage from this floor. All of it." The word wife dropped on the room like a bomb. Whitney took a step back. Her heel caught the marble seam and she stumbled, catching herself on the host stand. Naomi looked at her, calm and still, and for the first time all day she spoke without being told to. Tasha has it on video. The security office was small. Gray walls, a bank of monitors, a desk buried in radios. It smelled like old coffee and warm electronics. Marcus stood in the center, arms folded, silent. Dale by the door. The club's HR director, a woman named Lorraine Pace, sat at the desk gripping her own hands. Tasha came in holding her phone like it was something live. She opened the folder marked Receipts and pressed play. First clip, Whitney's voice, sharp, dripping. I can't breathe the same air as you. This whole room gets filthier the second you walk into it. Marcus's jaw flexed. Second, Whitney holding up the orchid. Is caring about something just not in your people? Lorraine's hand went to her mouth. Third, Naomi dragging the 90-pound riser across the marble, alone, while Whitney watched with her arms crossed and smiled. Then the last clip, the carafe. Whitney tilting it, the water pouring down Naomi's shirt, the gasp, the red, and Whitney's laugh. Now you match the mess you already are. Dale paused the video. Silence, except the hum of the monitors. Marcus spoke one sentence. Bring her in. 2 minutes later, Whitney walked through the door. Blazer buttoned, chin up, hands trembling at her sides. She tried the smile first. Chairman Hartwell, I want you to know tonight's event is completely under control. Whatever misunderstanding, sit down. She sat. Marcus spoke the way a man speaks when his name is on the deed to the building. I just watched 4 videos of you harassing, humiliating, and pouring boiling water on a member of my staff. I want your explanation. Choose your words carefully. Whitney's smile collapsed. It was a joke. The water was an accident. She's blowing it way out of proportion. I didn't know what. I didn't know she was your wife. Marcus leaned in. So if she were my wife, calling her filth and burning her would be acceptable. Whitney opened her mouth. Nothing came out. That's what I thought. He turned to Lorraine. Effective immediately, Whitney Pruitt is suspended without pay, pending a full investigation. Pull every complaint ever filed against her. Every one. And I want her off his property in 10 minutes. Lorraine started typing. Whitney's composure broke, her voice cracking. Please, 7 years. This will ruin me. I made one mistake. You didn't make a mistake. You didn't make a mistake. You made a choice. Every single day. People make mistakes. You made a habit out of cruelty. He turned to Dale. Walk her out. Dale opened the door. 2 officers waited. Whitney stood on shaking legs, mascara starting to run, and walked between them, clutching her purse like a shield. The floor staff watched in silence as she crossed the marble and vanished into the elevator. Marcus wasn't finished. Where is Gerald Boyd? Gerald was in his office, behind his desk, rattling the tin with both hands. Marcus filled the doorway. How many complaints were filed against Whitney Pruitt? Gerald swallowed. A few. How many? 5 formal. Maybe more I didn't write down. And what did you do about them? Gerald stared at his desk. That's your answer. Marcus nodded. You're on administrative leave. Effective now, pending review. HR will have your formal notice by morning. Gerald didn't argue. He set the tin down and reached for his coat. Marcus paused at the door and turned back once. Next time someone tells you they're being mistreated, try listening. It's free. He walked back to the security office. Tasha was still standing there, phone in hand. He stopped and put out his hand. Thank you. What you did took real courage. You have my word, no retaliation. Not now. Not ever. Tasha shook his hand. Firm, steady, one nod. Then Marcus walked down the hall to the coat closet, where Naomi was waiting, and took her hand. They walked together through the service corridor, past the kitchen, past the dining room glowing gold and humming with string music, and neither of them said a word. They didn't need to. The investigation started the next morning. Marcus didn't wait for HR to schedule meetings or for legal to draft memos. He picked up the phone at 7 a.m. and called the chief operating officer of Ellsworth Hospitality directly. I want a full internal review, not just the club. all 38 properties. Every complaint in the last 5 years involving discrimination, harassment, or a hostile work environment. Names, dates, documentation. On my desk in 2 weeks. By noon, 4 investigators set up on the 49th floor. They started with Tasha. She sat across from them in her uniform, hands folded, voice level, and told them everything. The comments, the reassignments, the way Whitney spoke to white staff versus everyone else. Then she handed over her phone. They watched every clip twice. After Tasha, they interviewed 11 more people. Current staff, former staff, people who'd quit without ever explaining why. A porter named Denise Holloway said Whitney once refused to share the service elevator with her. She looked at me like I was something stuck to her shoe, Denise said. Then she waited for the next question. A former busser named Andre Coleman said Whitney reported him for stealing after he returned a member's lost wallet a few minutes late. No theft. He was fired anyway. No investigation. No appeal. A line cook named Yolanda Pierce described the night Whitney walked through the kitchen, looked straight at the 2 black cooks on the line and said, "Something in here smells off and it isn't the food." 5 formal complaints, 13 informal reports, 4 resignations tied directly to Whitney's behavior, all documented, all ignored. Gerald Boyd's initials were on 3 of the dismissal forms with notes in his handwriting that read, "Resolved. No further action." The pattern stretched back 3.5 years. It was undeniable. On day 3, the story broke. With Naomi's blessing, Tasha posted the hot water clip to her own account. No caption, no commentary. The footage did the talking. Whitney's voice, the slow pour, the laugh. Naomi standing there, soaked and silent. 40 hours later, it had 19 million views. A Chicago station picked it up first. A reporter outside the Marbury Tower with the club's gold crest gleaming behind her. Then the national outlets followed. Cable panels argued about it. Columnists dissected it. The headline spread like a grease fire. Manager pours boiling water on employee as a joke. Turns out she's the chairman's wife. Former Ellsworth workers came forward by the dozen. People who'd swallowed it for years suddenly had a microphone, and they used it. Whitney's name trended 4 days straight. Her professional network evaporated overnight. Old colleagues distanced themselves in public. One posted, "I watched Whitney behave this way for years, and I regret staying silent." On day 8, Whitney issued an apology through a crisis firm, polished and hollow. "I deeply regret any actions that may have caused harm, and I'm committed to growth." The internet didn't buy a word of it. The top reply under every repost was the same. "She's not sorry she did it. She's sorry she got caught." On day 12, the investigation closed. Ellsworth Hospitality released a statement. Whitney Pruitt was terminated for cause, effective immediately. No severance, no reference, no rehire at any property. Gerald Boyd was demoted from general manager to assistant operations manager at a smaller property 3 states away. His salary cut, his name stripped from the club's directory. Both faced potential civil liability. Naomi filed a formal complaint with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and the company's lawyers cooperated fully, handing over every document, every clip, every internal message. On day 19, Whitney was served with a civil suit. Workplace harassment, racial discrimination, hostile work environment, intentional infliction of emotional distress, plus the assault. The evidence was overwhelming. The footage alone was enough. Her attorney told her to settle. She fought it at first, then she saw the case file, nearly 500 pages of testimony and footage, and she settled. The terms were sealed. The message was not. The ripple ran far past one dining room. Marcus called a company-wide leadership meeting. Every general manager, every regional director, every HR lead. A mandatory video conference that ran 3 hours. He sat in front of the camera in his office. No notes, no teleprompter. What happened at the Ellsworth Club was not one bad apple. It was a systemic failure. A failure of leadership. A failure of accountability. And it happened because people with power chose silence over action. He paused. That ends today. Ellsworth Hospitality announced a complete overhaul. Mandatory bias training for every employee, from the executive floor to the dish pit. An anonymous reporting hotline staffed by an independent third party. a zero-tolerance policy with immediate investigation protocols. Marcus created a brand new seat on the executive team chief people officer role, built to make sure that what happened to Naomi and to Denise and Andre and Yolanda and every worker who suffered in silence would never happen again. He offered it to one person, Naomi. She didn't answer right away. She sat in their kitchen that night, still in her jeans, the chain still around her neck where the wedding ring lived during shifts. She turned the offer over in her mind the way she'd turned those napkins that morning, carefully, deliberately, with precision. Then she said yes, not because she wanted a title, not because she wanted power, because she knew exactly what it felt like to stand in a windowless closet with the door opened, watching a whole room pretend nothing was wrong. And she was done pretending. 8 months later, Naomi Hartwell sat behind a glass desk on the 49th floor of Ellsworth Hospitality's headquarters. The Chicago skyline stretched out behind her, the lake a long silver ribbon under the morning sun. On the desk, a framed photo of her and Marcus on their wedding day, a small jade plant Tasha had given her on her first day in the role, and a printed copy of the company's rewritten anti-discrimination policy 51 pages, every word reviewed by Naomi herself, Chief People Officer. The title still felt new. The work didn't. The work felt like breathing. In her first 3 months, she visited 22 of the company's 38 properties. She sat in break rooms. She ate in staff cafeterias. She listened, not from a boardroom, not from a conference call face-to-face, eye-to-eye. She heard stories that sounded exactly like hers. Different names, different cities, the same silence. A bellhop in Denver told he was too rough for the front desk. A housekeeper in Houston whose hours got cut every time she reported a broken lock. A bartender in Boston who watched a manager throw a rag in a barback's face and call it tough love. Naomi documented every story. She built a database. She created a reporting system that didn't route through the same managers who caused the problems. Independent, anonymous, protected. In 6 months, 224 reports were filed across the company. 91 investigations were opened. 16 employees were terminated. 7 were retrained. 3 properties replaced their entire management teams. But here's where this one ends a little differently. Naomi didn't stop at policy. She tracked down every person Whitney had pushed out over those 3.5 years, one by one, and she made a single promise to each of them, a real way back, on their terms. The anonymous hotline got its first call on a Tuesday at 9:14 in the morning, a young man's voice shaking but determined. I don't know if anyone's actually going to do something, but I have to say this out loud. Someone did something. Tasha Reed was promoted to assistant dining manager at the Ellsworth Club. Full title, full salary, full benefits. She still kept her phone close out of old habit, but she didn't need the folder anymore. Denise Holloway, the porter Whitney wouldn't ride the elevator with, was offered back pay and a written apology from the company. She cried when she read it, not over the money, but because somebody had finally said, "We believe you." Andre Coleman, the busser fired over a lie, was contacted by Ellsworth's legal team and offered his job back with compensation. He turned the job down. He'd built a new life, but he took the apology. He said it was the first time in years anyone admitted he'd done nothing wrong. Whitney Pruitt never worked in hospitality again. Her name had become a thing companies trained their people to recognize. She left Chicago, deleted her accounts, and disappeared into the same silence she once forced on everyone beneath her. Gerald Boyd finished his demotion quietly near Indianapolis. He never buried another complaint. Whether he changed or just learned to fear the consequences, nobody could say for sure. And Marcus kept leading the company. But something in how he led had shifted. He opened every board meeting with one question. What are we not seeing? It became a company tradition, a reminder that the most dangerous problems are the ones the people in charge decide not to look at. And Naomi never forgot the coat closet. She kept one wire hanger from that night in her desk drawer right next to the warped water-stained name tag she'd worn, the one that still read "Nomi" in plain block letters. The plastic bubbled where the boiling water had hit it. Not as a trophy. As a reminder of the buzzing fluorescent light, of the smell of cedar and dust, of the sound of a bracelet jingling away while the whole room said nothing. She kept it because she never ever wanted to become someone who forgot what the floor feels like. So look, the story? Made up. Completely fiction. But be real with me for a second. That feeling when somebody with a little power treats you like you're nothing, calls you filth, burns you, and laughs, and everybody around you just watches and says nothing? That part isn't fiction. That's somebody's actual life right now. And that's why I had to tell this one. Because most people who go through what Naomi went through don't have a husband who's the chairman. They don't get a viral clip. They don't get a company-wide overhaul. They get silence. They get pushed out. They get forgotten. But that doesn't mean nothing can change. It means the change has to come from the people watching. From the Tashas, the ones brave enough to hit record. The ones who refuse to look away. So if this one hit you somewhere deep, go ahead and hit that like button. Share it with somebody who needs to hear it, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Because the real question was never whether this happens. The real question is, if nobody's recording, does anyone ever find out?